So thanks for everyone joining again another week. So let's dive into it. I always have this up just so maybe we could try to plan for an in-person meeting. If anyone has any ideas, or the main thing is getting sponsorship. I haven't been actively been looking, but people want to figure out a type of meeting that has COVID in it, and all of us to get together to discuss ideas, and more people to join. That'd be great. No new papers this week or this month yet. There's just the papers from last year. Hopefully we'll hear back from this preprint here soon. This in the last stages of the mitochondrial paper. Haven't heard anything yet. Just a couple of quick updates. You might have saw an email from Al. He had sent folks. He's getting the long COVID case studies moving along. I think Al's going to, for people who are interested, he's going to send a little poll for me. He sent a poll yesterday for meeting times, so people can apply back. We can have our first meetings. But he had two interesting long COVID case reports that we're going to help him get to a good quality and submit to hopefully a nice journal. So if you're interested, reach out to Al and he'll get you involved. And then also the long COVID, I keep threatening subgroup to start again. I'll start it hopefully soon. There might be some data coming in soon, but we'll see. All right, let's dive into the news. So again, I just keep before the holidays, they had the government released free home testing is still available. So if you haven't taken advantage of that, I just leave this up here just in case you wanted to order your free home test and you haven't yet for COVID. So this one little highlight for China, and I know it's always in the news about the COVID peaks. There's been some articles that say Chinese have reported it's going down. There's no more of an issue, but more and more indications, because they just had their Chinese New Year, their Lunar New Year, that the cases are still peaking. But although we don't have reliable reports coming in either way from them, but there's guesstimates, I should say, that are saying that the cases have not waned, still going. Just not one quick thing, but we're going to talk about the boosters in a couple of papers in the next slide, I think. But the FDA, I know there was some recent news about the boosters talking about that, there's been some misinformation. I spoke about it a couple of meetings ago, talking about how the boosters don't do anything, but there's plenty of papers now coming out, which I'll show you one in a slide or two down, that's showing the benefits of it. But there's a recent article that the government wants to potentially just say once a year you get your yearly COVID booster shots. But this article came out saying that luckily there's been people on the FDA board that might say that's not a good idea. It might keep. So the basic information is that they said it's not known enough. This is too new of a virus, and we shouldn't do this. But there's been debate going back and forth about that. Okay, so then, oops. Sorry, I accidentally hit this slide forward.
Option, I didn't understand. Okay. Does the FDA, do these other people think we shouldn't get a yearly booster, or that's not frequent enough?
It's not frequent enough. Yeah, sorry, I was unclear. So the advisor board of FDA this week said there's too many unknowns. It's not frequent enough. You should stick with like what they're recommending every 6 months for now, or whatever. The science will tell us as the virus evolves.
I thought the recommendation up until this point had been roughly every 6 months to get some kind of booster, whether it's bivalent or the original whatever, but at least something roughly every 6 months. So I too was rather surprised to hear the concept of, oh, that's okay, just forget about that. Oh, once a year should be good.
Yeah, exactly. The recommendation currently is exactly what you said, Hannah, 6 months. Yeah, but yeah.
I think they just want to piggyback from the flu vaccination infrastructure, but there are different viruses, and it doesn't make sense to just try to couple both together.
Exactly. Yeah, and then the other part is I think there was another article which I didn't post here that I read saying that. The bivalent booster has been a very low turnout. I forget what the percentages are, but it was around the 15 or 20% mark, if I remember correctly. So the kind of, in my opinion, they might be kind of throwing up their arms and saying, "Hey, we'll try to say, as Nydia said, incorporate it with the flu, and it's better than nothing" kind of approach. That's I guess how I see it, in my opinion. But I'm not sure that's their viewpoint. That was just my opinion, but
Yeah, that's another good reason that why they might be doing that.
yeah, I guess yeah. So that was just but there's some nice papers that have come out the past week that I'll show you in the next slides, couple of slides down, or one slide down. But first, there's some, I guess I should have put this in long COVID news, but I put it here in this first slide about a recent article, which is here in Lancet, came out saying, COVID potentially does raise cholesterol levels. So if you had COVID and you never had any cholesterol issues and you went to your doctor this year for your checkup, and you had high cholesterol levels, maybe it's because of this. And this paper talks about, again, these papers don't really go into the biology why. This person here, Zaid Al-Ali, he has put out a lot of good papers on COVID and long COVID. I'm sure you might recognize his name. I think he does some good work in the COVID field, personally. But what they did is more just epidemiological kind of study. They looked at patient samples, or patient data, I should say, not samples. And they compared, post-acute phase over 30 days and over a year, basically comparing that. And their basic finding is that they see that this lipidemia is a potential after a year burden, as an increase in people who've had COVID infections after the post-acute phase. So this is some plots from here. So this is like looking at the averages from the, regular cholesterol counts you might get from your blood. And then,
did they have any preclinical result, lipid panel results? Panels.
So this is just again, this is just purely post-COVID and COVID results. So, so they're comparing the picture. So yeah, so basically, yeah. So basically, yeah. What's that, Bill?
These are pre-morbid conditions, and you have triglycerides greater than 150 milligrams.
Yes, those conditions are not part of this. They're talking about people who have never had cholesterol levels at all, or conditions preconditions. So let me go on. Let's go. Yeah. So okay. So the study is controlled for that. So it's not saying that you have a pre-existing condition of cholesterol. No, these are people who've never had existing conditions of high cholesterol or cholesterol issues.
That's what they say.
Yes, that's what the study's controlled for. So, yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So, basically, again, the biology is not there. This is another figure from the plot showing ICU, hospitalized or non-hospitalized versions compared to, as they say here, to the control cohort of care setting, contemporary. So they see that ICU doesn't. I don't know if this is significant. It doesn't look like significant, but it does look like there's an increase here. So that's an interesting article. The biology, again, does not, they don't discuss the biology. But that's some hot mic here that has a lot of background noise. So I'm going to make sure you mute. Okay, so again, there's a little mic issue here. I'm going to mute some of the mics that are hot. Okay, so that's an interesting article people can read. In line of cholesterol issues, there's a nice news article talking about heart-related deaths. Again, purely just statistical, looking at the numbers. And this is from the American Heart Association. They've reported this. This is what the article is reference. Saying there's an increase in, at least this was in 2020, and then there's also newer data on the American Heart Association website showing increase in heart disease, stroke. They don't link it to COVID, but it can be. That's what this article is saying. Now the booster articles down here, I put the China part here, but this lower panel here, you can see there's a nice article by the CDC that has come out. This is one of their weekly, quick reports talking about the benefits. There's two papers actually. There's one here and there's one here. I should have put them on the same slide, but this is another one from the New England Journal of Medicine. It's a very short editorial piece. Again, talking about how the bivalent boosters, how does it protect against XBB.1.5? And going back to here, basically these reports had shown, this is what the breakdown is from this, and this news article breaks it down. So talking about if you're up to 49 and age lower, the bivalent boosters from Pfizer and Moderna are 48% effective for against symptomatic symptomatic infections for XBB.1.5. So that's good. And then people who are older than that, it seems to drop a little bit from 48 to 40 to 43%. So, but that's overall good findings, I think they had. Again, in this CDC report and this New England Journal of Medicine, there's like two independent ones. Little reports on this. I thought I'd just share this part here, the little article going back to the China thing, talking about this is like a Nature little article about talking about what's occurring in China and people who are interested in the variants coming from China, what's the outcome of it and what will happen. And basically the article is, as we know, China hasn't been reporting it very well. They have been depositing some of their sequences and their variants on GISAID, not that well, not that abundantly as the rest of the world has. But from what they have deposited, basically, this is a GitHub page from this lab that monitors stuff and analyzes it. So, and these links are all here where I'll share the slides as usual. But you can see there's a few different Omicron variants, and they talk about it here, that are popping up. That could be of a concern, but they're what the basic article is saying, talking to the experts and people, is not of a concern yet because it most likely won't gain any traction outside of China due to the pre-existing immunities and the vaccination that's around the world. But that's just the opinions of these people there. So that was interesting. People want to know what kind of variants or new variants popping up is here, but they're, again, as even this GitHub page said, it's in the single digits. So long COVID news, there isn't much. So I just put the review from Eric Topol I talked about last week. But the few papers that have come out, again, it's unfortunate there's not much progress, but there's this one paper that's more of a kind of a perspective piece study that's done looking at university settings. This is one of these articles from the CDC, and they talk about, this is from George Washington University, it indicates about 36% of the faculty and staff develop long COVID, but the issue is there's not really any good controls in this study. So, but it just talks about the symptoms and what they've accumulated. A little perspective piece in that. But there isn't much other news this week or this past couple of weeks on progress of long COVID, other than the review that came out a couple of weeks ago now, which I'm sure people have paid attention to and read.
I'm sorry.
Which again, go ahead. Sorry.
Excuse me for interrupting. I was just curious.
No.
36% of the infected students, faculty, and staff went on to develop long COVID symptoms. That seems like
I think they're saying all students and staff in the really? Study. Yeah, that's what they're saying.
That just seems okay. My guess is they're using a fairly broad definition of long COVID because that seems like an extremely high percentage compared with other estimates of incidence for long COVID, right?
Right. No, I agree.
I would say the only way that would make sense to me is if this were perhaps all these cases were pre-vaccination, but in a post-vaccination world, this doesn't look like it makes sense.
Yeah, so that's what the abstract is saying. Yep, it says people who are not fully vaccinated, who are female, who are more former COVID, they have underlying. So they talked about long COVID. This is right here if you read that. So I think vaccination might have not been introduced in the study. So Diana's probably correct. Yeah, and it's from July 21st to March 2022, so last year. Or early last year, I should say, from 2021 to early last year.
Well, that's about when the vaccines were becoming available, isn't it? The summer of 2021. I think that's when I got my first vaccination.
Yeah. There's some flaws. It's a really short study. There's some flaws.
Yeah, when I asked Survivor Corps members about when they had their infection that led to their long COVID, they were primarily, vastly in the on pre-vaccinated days, just by definition. The vaccination wasn't available, which is why, I love Dr. Ali, but I don't buy the 15% reduction by vaccine. I think it's much larger, which would make more sense for this if it were, in a pre-vaccination world.
Yeah, those other the long COVIDs, reduction. I know Topol talks about it, and they're from the range of, he said 15 to 50% reduction, depending on what article you read, right? And by the booster you had in this review article, and he has the references in there. So I think the numbers for Diana's point is probably more. Maybe it does reduce, long COVID is reduced more with the vaccine. I would buy that, what Diana said. But yeah, so I just thought I'll share the one new article for long COVID that I found this past week. So there seems to be a little stagnation in, unfortunately, in research coming out this week. But I could have been missing some articles too.
I just have one question about this article because it says their definition of long COVID was 30 days after initial positive test. Seems fairly short. Our definition.
Yeah, that's another issue too. Thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, exactly. I guess nowadays they usually say you gotta at least have, was it 60 days post COVID? I think that's what they're trying to define long COVID as.
Yes.
Yeah. So this could be another issue why 36% is so high for Hannah's point.
I was just thinking that. Yeah, if your cutoff is 30 days, I mean, I would say there are some people who haven't recovered from their acute COVID 30 days after their first positive test. So to turn around and say, okay, now you have long COVID, even though we haven't determined the end of your acute COVID, to me that's pretty. Well, it just makes the results very difficult to interpret.
Yeah, and this is a very short article too, so there's some flaws in this one, but thought I'll share it just to see what people think. So don't take this paper or article too seriously yet for their numbers. I guess that's the lesson learned today. I don't know if there's any other questions in this one, or if anyone has any other long COVID news or that I missed, let me know. Very well could have. I just put the the long COVID, this nice long COVID dashboard that's out. I mean, there's not much information on it other than reporting in the U.S. counties and estimates of what long COVID is for counties and states. Okay, so the variants that are being, again, as we know, it's XBB.1.5 around the U.S. If I go to the, I'll go to the CDC tracker in a second. But if you go to BioBot, I guess the good news is, and I mentioned this last week, it was starting to go down. You can see the wastewater nationally, in the U.S. at least, is going down. As we had known, Northeast had the most climb for it in most cases, and also those were XBB. I'll show you in a second. That 1.5 was prominent. BioBot does a good job breaking down the purple, this little dark purple XBB. You can still see the percentages rising in the wastewater from the latest data they have from yesterday. And then just one county where I live, around the Boston area, you can see this drastic drop in the weight in the case in the amounts of SARS-CoV-2 in the wastewater. So that's, I guess, good news. Hopefully it keeps going down. And then if you look at the CDC tracker, one thing to note, CDC, they changed their little visual display here, which is, I think, nice. One thing that, if you're familiar with the CDC tracker, they have this nowcast estimates, which I always use. The actual data is 2 weeks previous from the prediction. So this 1231 is what the actual data they have. And then through their nowcast algorithm, if I'm sure most of you are familiar with, they make their predictions based. It's a very nice algorithm the CDC uses to make the predictions of what is occurring right now. So this is what the nowcast, when you turn this on, you see that. So they separated this so to make it a little more clear, saying, well, this is the actual sequencing data that's there. This is how it's rising, and this is what based on their algorithms, based on what they know, this is what estimates should be of XBB.1.5, the variant distribution. So that's why if you look at the tracker now, you'll see the separation they have. But overall, you can see, again, the Northeast and its predictions are talking about XBB.1.5 is prominent there, and then I guess in the West Coast is slowly, as you go east to west, and the U.S. is slowly taking over more and more. So globally, this is kind of a mess, but it looks like everything's going down. If we break it down more by, the continents, you can see, and I put some countries in there too. But you can see, for example, in Europe, South America, some of the Asian countries that follow the trends that most of the countries there too, in the United States, everywhere it seems to be cases are dropping for at least the cases and the hospitalizations for the places that report hospitalizations. The deaths are going down, which is good. Also, then the ICU are starting to dip the places that do report it. If you break it down from country to country, you see the same trend. Germany is going down. France is going down. UK, again, has the reporting issue where they stopped reporting. That's why I just showed this for fun. But there is this weird glitch here that shows deaths are going up, but I don't know if that's actually real. So that might be just a glitch from their reporting, but we'll find out next week. The USA, we already went over. It's going cases, deaths, hospitalizations are going down from the peak after the holidays. Same with South America. I guess the weather in most places South America is warmer, summertime. Some places, maybe that's could account for that too. And Japan had their peaks here, as you can see, and they're starting to drop also, which is good to see. South Korea, same thing, and then Australia, the same thing, except for the deaths. I think it's probably left over from their initial peak here. And I bring up South Africa again, just so they've stopped reporting. So in case people have collaborators in South Africa, they could potentially bring them on board, and we could get some nice insight from them about the actual case numbers and what's happening. So whether this cyclic thing that we've kept seeing happening, is it still happening or not? We don't know. That was a quick run through for everything. I guess in a nutshell, hasn't been much other news other than what I've seen here and the standard things we've been talking about China, some new papers that have popped up that are interesting, and then long COVID. Unfortunately, there hasn't been too much progress in the past couple of weeks, other than this nice review from Eric Topol and a few papers popping up.